in my presentation at an anime convention without trying more desperately to sell Miki Falls to you. I'm known for that on YouTube, sadly. Every video I do ends with, and here's my book. Not that you have to buy it.
In fine bookstores everywhere.
to the point where people will, will you stop showing the book, dude? Now, just teach us how to draw and shut up about your book. That's kind of where we are. In any case, let me tell you a little bit about my book. Now that I've got you all trapped in the room, and I have locked the door. So,
Okay.
Oh no!
Here's a little something. You talk about being shameless. I had this story idea, and it could easily have been one book. It could easily have been one pretty long book. But I really did not want to put all my time into creating this world and creating these characters and only have one book. I wanted it to be a series. And so I thought, how can I convince the publishers to do it as 4 books? And that's when I came up with this idea of the seasons of the year. And I thought, well, if the book starts in spring, which is the time of beginnings, and then goes to summer, which is when things kind of heat up and start to get a little more complicated. When we get to autumn, it's a time when things get darker. You have the feeling that something bad is coming, something dark and dangerous might be on its way. And then finally, winter would be my final volume, the volume of like being in danger of death itself almost, in the dead of winter when everything seems to have died. And so I came up with this idea of, well, I'll divide it into the 4 books based on the seasons. And I pitched it that way to HarperCollins. I shouldn't say I pitched it, I had an agent who pitched it to 8 different publishers, and lo and behold, 5 of them wanted it. And it was like one of the most exciting days of my life when these 5 different publishers kind of got into a miniature bidding war, I suppose you'd have to say. Not that it went back and forth, but they all had their one chance to say, how much are you willing to pay for this series? And HarperCollins, I think, clearly thought, we want this, and we're going to make an offer that's big enough to blow everyone else out of the water and just make sure that we get it. And man, what a day that was. And I kept thinking, they fell for it, this whole season.
4 books. This is going to be great. Of course, now you have to actually do it.
Yeah, then I had to knuckle down and do it. And it really is like one story. Anyone who's read this, and I at home is kind of pathetic, but I actually took 4 of the books and I taped them together to show myself what would it look like if it were just one book, But it was such a lot of fun doing this series, and I felt like I had finally created a story that I myself would 100% love to read. Okay, that sounds a little funny to say, but you're always sort of doing a balancing act between the story that you want to read and the story that you imagine other people out there are willing to buy. And that kind of means that you are going to throw a certain amount of action scenes in, and that's maybe part of the secret to Akiko's success in a lot of people's eyes. You never get a chance to get bored. Every few pages, something amazing happens. There's explosions. There's dinosaurs. There's it's just like constant barrage of creativity. And depending on how you feel about what you want to see in a story, Akiko or Miki Falls may be a little more challenging for the reader because it isn't constantly throwing wildly imaginative stuff like that. But what it is doing is allowing me to kind of almost reinvent myself and rediscover, and I had not anticipated this really, rediscover what comics is all about, creating comics is all about. Because I had never used these kinds of layouts until I came to Miki Falls, and I suddenly thought, hey, I don't need to make 2 panels, and this all comes straight out of shoujo manga, I can make one panel and have him do it coming up into this panel, and it becomes this, this is the part of the story where Miki is trying to get to know Hiro, the main character in the story. It all takes place in Japan. He's a they're all Japanese characters, but he's this mysterious boy who's come into town. And Miki, the main character, really wants to get to know him. And she keeps coming up to him and saying, "Hey, Hiro, what's going on? Hey, it's me, Miki, what's up? Hey, but we haven't talked since this morning. What's going on?" And Hiro finally gets fed up and he says, "Look, Miki, all these little chit-chat conversations that you keep trying to strike up with me are making me uncomfortable. So it's going to stop right here, right now." And then the next scene, she says, "You called me Miki." And
Which is a big thing.
he says, "No, I didn't." She says, "Yes, you did. You called me Miki. We're getting to know each other. This is great, you know." And he says, "Why won't you just leave me alone?" You know, and he's so angry, and she's so taken aback by this. And this is where I really get to pull out the sort of Japanese manga shoujo tradition, you know, zooming into the eyes. She's on the verge of tears. And he's not backing down. Suddenly, this is where I feel like she's finding her inner Miki, you know. She's standing up to it. So he's like, "Why won't you just leave me alone?" And she says, "I won't leave you alone because you don't really want me to leave you alone." And then she totally stares him down and says, "You won't admit that, not even to yourself, but it's true." And that's just a little 4-page sample of the story. But this shows you how I just really got the chance to start all over again and fall in love with comics in a way. I mean, again, you know, this could be 4 separate panels, what you have here, but being able to blend it all together into one page was just a lot of fun for me. And every opportunity that I had to do away with panels or to work with panels in a creative way, I just grabbed it and went for it. Let me show you. I came up with this as a way of showing people techniques of showing conversation in a comic strip.